The state was putting a new highway through, and the buyout for our land was $250,000. The day I went to sign the papers, my next-door neighbor, Sharon Miller, blocked my front door. "You damn fool. Are you really going to sell off land that's been in your family for generations?" The mayor's son, Kevin, was the one who got the crowd going. $250,000? Just wait. If none of us sign, we can force them up to $750,000. The whole town pointed fingers and called me a traitor, said I was selling out my own heritage for a quick buck. I ignored them, took the money, and moved away. A year and a half later, I drove back to visit my parents' graves. Those same holdouts were gathered by that worthless, overgrown plot of land at the edge of town. One man was on his knees, pounding his fists into the dirt. When Sharon saw my new SUV, her eyes went red. The automated robocall from the town hall buzzed through the phone line, its tinny, recorded voice filling the evening quiet. "This is a community alert for the residents of Harmony Creek." The message echoed from a dozen houses down our quiet street, carrying an unshakable air of official importance. To support the state's infrastructure development, the planned route for the State Route 315 expansion will pass through the township, requiring the acquisition of designated properties. Following a formal assessment, the standard compensation for each affected household has been set at $250,000. $250,000. The number landed like a boulder in a calm pond, sending shockwaves through our small, forgotten town. I was sitting on my back porch, a dog-eared copy of a college microeconomics textbook in my hands. Beyond my fence, I could already hear the neighbors' excited chatter erupting. I closed the book, my gaze calm. For a town like Harmony Creek, stuck in a decades-long economic slump, $250,000 was a fortune. But for a piece of land about to become part of a major state transportation artery, the price was fair. It wasn't a lottery ticket, but it wasn't a ripoff either. I stood up, brushed the dust off my jeans, and headed for the town hall. I was going to sign. I'd barely pulled open the squeaking screen door when a wrinkled face appeared, blocking my path. It was Sharon Miller from next door. Her beady eyes were fixed on me, her mouth twisted into a permanent scowl. "Caleb Evans, just where do you think you're going, you damn fool?" Her voice was shrill and sharp, like nails on a chalkboard. "I'm asking you a question. Are you heading to the town hall to sign those papers?" I just looked at her. "You wouldn't dare? Is this how you repay your ancestors? Selling off the land your great-granddaddy worked?" Her spittle flew as she jabbed a finger toward my face. "What would your parents say if they were here to see this? You're a traitor to this town, selling out your own heritage." I stepped around her and kept walking toward the town hall. Behind me, her shouting grew louder, drawing more people out of their homes. "Everyone, come and see. The Evans boy is selling off his family's legacy. Can you believe it? He's letting them buy him off for a measly $250,000. No backbone." A young man with bleach blonde hair and an arrogant smirk jumped out from the crowd. It was Kevin Costello, the son of our town's mayor, Frank Costello. He shot me a look of contempt and yelled to the others, $250,000? Are they kidding me? That's chump change." He puffed out his chest. "Listen up, everyone. My dad's already been talking to folks at the county. If we all stick together, nobody signs. They can't afford the delays. The longer we hold out, the more they'll have to offer." He raised 3 fingers in the air. $750. We don't even talk to them for a penny less than $750. $750,000. The number lit up the eyes of every person in that crowd. You could almost hear their breathing get heavier. Their gazes shifted from simple disapproval to outright hostility. It was as if I wasn't just managing my own property, but actively stealing a winning lottery ticket from each and every one of them. "You hear that, Caleb? Kevin said we can get $750,000. If you sign now, you're making an enemy of this entire town. God, what a sellout. Throwing away his roots for a little cash." I walked through the center of their jeers, feeling their stares like daggers on my back. But I didn't slow my pace. Pushing open the door to the mayor's office, I found Frank Costello sitting behind his desk, sipping coffee from a stained mug. When he saw me, he slowly set his cup down and forced a weak smile. "Caleb, my boy, having second thoughts? Take some friendly advice. Don't be so hasty." He glanced at the crowd, gathering outside his window, and lowered his voice. You see how everyone feels. We need to play the long game here. Show the state we're not a bunch of pushovers. I pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down, looking him straight in the eye. Frank, I just have one question, I said, my voice quiet but clear. If this all goes south and we don't get the $750,000 or even the $250,000, are you going to write me a check for the difference? The mayor's smile froze. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I broke eye contact, grabbed a pen from the cup on his desk, and flipped open the acquisition agreement. I found my name, signed it, then pressed my thumb onto the ink pad and added my print, firm and clear. The whole thing was over in seconds. Outside the door, the crowd stared in dead silence. I stood up, ignoring the mayor's now ashen face, and turned to leave. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea, their faces a mixture of disbelief and pure venom. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from my banking app. A direct deposit of $250,000 has been credited to your checking account. I slid the phone back into my pocket, my hand closing around the thin plastic of my debit card. Under Sharon Miller's fiery, hate-filled glare, I walked out of the town hall without looking back. Behind me, there was only a stunned, dead silence. Back home, I didn't waste a second. I started packing. There wasn't much to pack, really. A few changes of clothes, a box filled with my books, and a folder of personal documents. This house, had never felt like more than just a place to sleep. I dragged a dusty wooden chest out from under my bed. Inside were a few faded black and white photographs and a collection of academic awards from high school. In the pictures, my parents always looked stern, their expressions tinged with a familiar impatience. Fragments of memory surfaced. I was 10 when Sharon Miller's son broke a neighbor's window. She immediately blamed me. She stood on our lawn and screamed for an entire afternoon, her words vile and accusatory. When my parents got home, they didn't ask for my side of the story. They just dragged me into the yard and took a belt to my backside. I cried and insisted it wasn't me, which only made them angrier. Don't you dare lie to us. You're embarrassing this family. A week later, the truth came out. Sharon never apologized. Neither did my parents. The incident was forgotten by everyone but me and the fading marks on my back. And then there was Kevin Costello. Growing up, he used his father's position as mayor to rule the playground. He'd steal my lunch money, rip my homework, and get his friends to corner me after school. The memories flickered through my mind like an old movie reel. I had no attachment left to this place. Knock, knock, knock. A frantic pounding on the door broke my train of thought. I opened it to find my childhood buddy, Leo Martinez. He was the only person in this whole town who didn't look at me like I was something scraped off the bottom of a shoe. Caleb, man, you really signed? Are you leaving? His face was creased with worry, his forehead beaded with sweat. I nodded and continued loading books into a box. Why would you do that? The whole town is trashing you. How are you ever going to come back from this? He grabbed the other end of the heavy box, his expression grim. I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. Leo, this was never about the money. My voice was steady. It was about a chance to leave. Leo stared at me, searching my face for something, anger, regret, anything. But all he found was a profound, almost cold, sense of calm. He sighed and stopped trying to argue, quietly helping me finish packing. The U-Haul van I'd reserved online arrived right on time. As Leo and I carried the last of the boxes to the curb, Sharon Miller and her posse of town gossips appeared at the end of my driveway. They stood with their arms crossed, smirking. Well, look at Mr. Big Shot, all cashed up and heading to the big city. Hope he enjoys it. Not sure how he plans on visiting his parents' graves after selling out the whole damn town. Their taunts and laughter blended into a grating chorus. I ignored them, opened the passenger door of the U-Haul, and climbed in. I gave Leo a final nod through the window. Take care of yourself. You too, man. Call me when you get settled. Leo's eyes were a little red. I closed the door, shutting out the noise. The driver started the engine, and the van slowly pulled away from the curb. In the side view mirror, I saw their twisted, sneering faces shrink until they were just a blurry dot in the distance. My expression was like ice. I was never coming back to this place, except for the cemetery on the hill, where the two people who gave me my blood, but never their warmth, were buried. 3. I rented a small, south-facing apartment in Columbus. It wasn't much, but it was clean and bright. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the air smelled of city pavement, not dirt and manure. I took a deep breath. For the first time, I felt like I could actually breathe. I didn't squander the $250,000 like the folks in Harmony Creek probably imagined. I put a large chunk into a certificate of deposit as a safety net. With the rest, I started researching the market. Every day, I rode the city bus, crisscrossing different neighborhoods. I saw the city expanding at an incredible rate, with new high-rises and housing developments sprouting up everywhere. New roads were stretching out into the suburbs. The biggest bottleneck was always the same: logistics and construction materials. After a few weeks of analysis, I used a portion of my capital to register a small building material supply company. I ran it out of my apartment. The living room was my office. The bedroom was where I slept. It was a tough start, but I felt a drive I'd never known before. One evening, I was poring over a price list from a cement supplier when Leo called. "Caleb, what's up, man?" He sounded strange, like he was trying not to laugh. "Just looking over some paperwork. What's going on back home?" "Big news. Huge news." Leo's voice jumped an octave. "The town's having a victory party. A huge potluck barbecue right outside the town hall." I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "They're celebrating, get this, successfully driving out the traitor." "That's you." "They think getting rid of you cleared the way for their negotiations." I could faintly hear the sounds of shouting and laughter in the background. A woman's shrill voice cut through the noise. It was definitely Sharon. "Just you wait. Once we get that 750, no, $1 million. We'll have parties like this every day. Steak for everyone." She sounded drunk, her words slurred and arrogant. Then Kevin's voice took over. He was tapping a Bud Light bottle against a table for attention. "All right, people, settle down. Listen, my cousin's girlfriend works for the Department of Transportation in the capital. She gave me the inside scoop. This highway has to come through here. They've got no other choice. All we got to do is wait him out. So relax and have another beer." The crowd on the other end of the line roared with applause. They were acting like triumphant generals celebrating a victory before the war had even begun. Listening to it all, a cold, mocking smile spread across my face. Ignorance and arrogance, a potent combination. "Hey man, don't let them get to you," Leo said, his voice laced with concern. "These people are just—" "I'm not angry." I cut him off. "Why would I be angry about a bunch of clowns putting on a show?" I hung up, silencing the ridiculous celebration. Outside my window, the city lights of Columbus glittered, a silent, sprawling universe of possibility. I looked back down at the dense columns of figures on the quote sheet. The freedom and the hope of this new life felt more real than anything I'd left behind. That distant town and its absurd party had nothing to do with me anymore. 6 months flew by. My small company was finally on solid ground. Through hard work and a reputation for being reliable, I'd secured a few small but steady contracts with local construction firms. I wasn't the kind of owner who sat in office. I went with every delivery myself, personally ensuring the grade of gravel and the quality of cement were exactly what the client ordered. Customers appreciated seeing a young business owner willing to get his hands dirty, and the orders started getting bigger. Life was busy, but it was mine. One day, after a long delivery run, I got back to my apartment and my phone rang. It was Leo again. This time, the humor was gone from his voice, replaced by a nervous edge. "Caleb, something's not right," he said as soon as I picked up. "What's wrong?" I twisted the cap off a bottle of water and took a long drink. "The survey crews they said were coming? They never showed. Not a single one. Even the guys who came out at the very beginning with all that weird equipment, they're gone. Haven't seen anyone in months." A thought sparked in my mind. No activity at all? Nothing. The old oak trees they marked for removal at the edge of town are still standing there. People are starting to get nervous, whispering that something's up. "What about Kevin and Sharon?" I asked. "Puffed. Don't even get me started," Leo said with disgust. "Kevin held another town meeting. Told everyone this is just a negotiating tactic from the state. A starve out, he called it. Said they're testing our patience, trying to see who cracks first. He's telling everyone that now, more than ever, they have to stay united. And Sharon is his #1 cheerleader. Anyone who even hints at giving gets called a coward and a traitor who wants to follow in your footsteps. I could picture the scene perfectly, and it was almost laughable. But, Leo added, his tone shifting, a few families are starting to regret it. I've heard them talking, saying they should have just signed with you when they had the chance. They sent someone to the county seat to ask around, but nobody knows anything. I listened in silence, my fingers tapping a rhythm on my desk. Oh, and one more thing, Leo said, suddenly lowering his voice. I was visiting my aunt in Newberry last week, over in the next county. She said they've had survey crews all over the place lately. They're out in the hills every day, drilling and taking measurements. No one knows what for. The next county over? My heart skipped a beat. A vague but electrifying possibility flashed through my mind. I had a feeling this story was about to take a very dramatic turn. Got it, I said. I hung up the phone and walked to the window. Staring out at the distant streams of traffic, my thoughts sharpened. The greed of those people was about to write a check their mouths couldn't cash, and I was about to have a front row seat. A quiet, thrilling sense of anticipation began to build inside me. 5. The next day, I had a delivery for a new client in the opposite direction, but I went anyway, taking the long way around toward Newberry, the town Leo had mentioned. It was a small town, about the size of Harmony Creek, but cleaner and a little more prosperous. I parked my truck in front of the county courthouse and went inside. A few people were clustered around a large public notice board in the main hall. I walked over and immediately saw it. A single sheet of paper with an official state seal posted right in the center. The headline was in bold, black letters. Public notice of route realignment for the State Route 315 expansion project. My pulse quickened. I squeezed through the small crowd and read the document, word for word. The text was clear and brutally bureaucratic. Due to significant delays and resistance encountered during the property acquisition phase of the originally proposed route, vicinity of Harmony Creek Township, and to ensure the timely completion of this critical state infrastructure project, a panel of engineers has approved a revised route. The new proposed route will be shifted approximately 5 miles to the east. 5 miles east. I pulled out my phone and opened a map app. The distance between Harmony Creek and Newberry was just about 5 miles. The new highway was coming right through here. The notice was dated 2 months ago. I raised my phone and took a clear, crisp photo of the document. The snap of the camera's shutter felt like the fall of a gavel. A heavy weight I didn't even know I was carrying lifted, replaced by an intense, ice-cold satisfaction that was almost dizzying. I pictured everyone back in Harmony Creek, with Kevin still leading his ridiculous strategy sessions and Sharon still screaming at anyone who doubted him. They were like a team of donkeys hitched to a millstone, pulling with all their might, completely unaware that the grain had been moved to the barn next door. I didn't send the photo to Leo. Not yet. This was too good. The actors deserved to play out their final, triumphant scene before I brought the curtain down. I had to let the bullet fly a little longer. I got back in my truck, took a moment to compose myself, and called Leo. "Hey, Leo," I said, my voice deliberately casual. "Caleb, what's up?" "Nothing much. Just calling to see if there was any good news back home." Leo let out a bitter laugh. "Good news? You're kidding, right? Kevin's holding negotiation workshops now. He's even running drills. Had Sharon pretend to be the state representative while he and the others practiced yelling at her. His voice was filled with a sense of helpless absurdity. I held the phone, watching the scenery fly by my window, a cold smile touching my lips. I knew. Judgment Day was coming. 6. Another 2 months passed. In that time, my company's revenue doubled, and the people of Harmony Creek finally had their day of reckoning. The news about the highway's new route eventually made its way back to the isolated town, not through rumors, but through an official announcement. A representative from the county came down to hold a town meeting and deliver the news personally. According to Leo's breathless phone call, the moment the announcement was made, a strange, deathly silence fell over the town hall. The same people who had, just moments before, been chattering about how they'd pushed the compensation up to $1 million were suddenly frozen, as if someone had hit a universal mute button. Then chaos erupted. The first to break was Sharon Miller. She let out a primal scream, a sound that was barely human, and ran out of the hall. She threw her arms around one of the pillars at the entrance and began to wail, her sobs echoing through the stunned crowd. After that, the entire town exploded. A mob descended on Mayor Frank Costello's house, pounding on his front door until it shook in its frame. "Frank Costello, get the hell out here. Where's your son? Get Kevin out here to explain this. What happened to our $750,000? What happened to our $1 million?" Kevin was apparently hiding inside, too terrified to show his face. His father, the mayor, seemed to age a decade overnight. With his hair looking grayer than ever, he went door to door, trying to apologize. But nobody wanted apologies. They wanted money. The very people who had been Kevin and Sharon's most vocal supporters were now the ones leading the charge, their faces contorted with rage. The ugliest side of human nature was on full display. Leo was practically giving me a live broadcast over the phone, his voice filled with a giddy, unrestrained sense of vindication. "Caleb, you're not going to believe this. They're fighting. A full-on brawl broke out," he exclaimed. Sharon started screaming that Kevin tricked her, and she lunged at his mom. They were rolling around in the dirt, and Sharon ripped out a huge chunk of her hair. Kevin tried to break it up, but a few of the guys jumped him, pinned him to the ground, and started wailing on him. His face is swollen up like a pumpkin. While I listened to the mayhem on the other end, I calmly signed my name on a new supply contract. It was a big one, enough to double the size of my company again. The sun was shining outside my apartment window. I was in a great mood. On the phone, Leo was still excitedly detailing the town's meltdown. I let him finish, then replied with just 4 words. They got what they deserved. It was the final, definitive judgment on everything they had done. 7. After the initial explosion of rage, the town's drama shifted to its next phase, finding a scapegoat. Naturally, no one was willing to admit their own greed was the root cause. Instead, they were consumed by regret. If I'd known this was going to happen, I would have signed with Caleb from the start. I know, right? $250,000, safe in the bank. Now look at us. We got nothing. It's all Kevin's fault. And that crazy old witch Sharon Miller. Overnight, the narrative flipped completely. I, the traitor who had been publicly condemned, was now retroactively blessed with foresight and business sense. Their heroes, Kevin and Sharon, were now the villains who had ruined everyone's lives. A few days later, Leo called me, his tone bemused. "Dude, you'll never guess who showed up at my door." "Sharon Miller?" I said without a moment's hesitation. "Bingo. How'd you know?" Leo sounded amazed. "She brought over a box of store-brand cookies and a 6-pack of cheap soda. Stood on my porch, crying her eyes out, begging me to give her your number. She said she was confused back then, that she was just trying to do what was best for everyone, and that no-good punk Kevin had put all those ideas in her head. She begged me to ask you to be the bigger person and help them out for old time's sake." I could picture Sharon's face, contorted into a mask of pathetic sorrow, and I felt a wave of disgust. "You didn't give it to her, did you?" I asked. "Are you kidding me?" Leo's voice shot up. "After the way she screamed at you? The way she blocked your door that day? I told her to take her cookies and get the hell off my property." "Good man," I said, genuinely pleased. "That's not all," Leo continued. "Kevin sent a guy to talk to me. Said he wanted to invite you back for a beer, catch up. Said he wanted to pick your brain about how to make it in the city." I let out a cold laugh. He didn't want to pick my brain. He wanted me to be his lifeline, to use my connections to somehow undo the damage he'd caused. The same people who had accused me of spitting on my ancestors' graves were now telling anyone who would listen that they always knew Caleb Evans was a smart kid, destined for great things. Hearing all this from Leo didn't give me a shred of satisfaction. It just filled me with a profound contempt. The audacity of these people was unbelievable. "Leo, listen to me. Don't give my number to anyone," I told him. "Don't worry, I won't." I knew they weren't at rock bottom yet. They were still clinging to the hope that I, the outcast they had banished, would return like some kind of savior and fix everything. They were waiting for me to come back, so they could trap me with appeals to community and shared history. Too bad for them. I wasn't a savior. I was just a spectator enjoying the show. 8. A year and a half later, on Memorial Day weekend, I drove my new $40,000 SUV back to the village I had once called home. I was there to visit my parents' graves. The black Ford Explorer crunched over the potholed dirt road at the town entrance, its engine a low growl that seemed alien in the oppressive quiet. I looked out the window. The field that was supposed to have been paved over for the highway on-ramp was now a sea of overgrown weeds. Thistles and crabgrass stood waist-high, swaying in the breeze, a monument to failed ambition. A group of familiar faces was gathered at the edge of the field. They looked hollowed out, their faces gray and their eyes empty. A few of the older men were squatting on the ground, smoking hand-rolled cigarettes, their despair shrouded in a thin blue haze. Suddenly, one of the men fell to his knees. He started pounding the hard, dry earth with both fists, the sound a series of dull, miserable thuds. "My money, my new house," he cried, his voice hoarse with a grief that was a year and a half too late. My SUV rolled slowly past. The sound of the engine finally broke their trance. Every head turned in my direction. Their expressions were a painful mix of shock, envy, regret, and a sliver of pathetic, desperate hope. Sharon Miller was in the crowd. When her eyes focused and she realized it was me behind the wheel, her dull gaze flared with a shocking intensity, then quickly filled with bloodshot rage. Like a cornered animal, she let out a shriek and charged toward my vehicle. Caleb Evans, you're back. You finally came back." She ran right up to my driver's side window and started beating on the glass with her bony hands. Thump, thump, thump. Her voice was raspy and laced with a theatrical, desperate affection. "Caleb, please. We need you." I hit the brakes and put the car in park. I didn't get out. I just sat there, watching her frantic performance. Then, slowly, I pressed the button to lower the window. The dark-tinted glass slid down with a silent hum. The cool, conditioned air from inside my car met the hot, dusty air outside, creating an invisible wall between us. I looked at her, my face a blank mask. She looked ancient and worn, her hair a messy tangle of gray, her face a roadmap of deep wrinkles, and her fingernails caked with dirt. And I sat in my clean, quiet, new-smelling car. The contrast was stark and brutal. Before Sharon could launch into her next rehearsed plea, Kevin and a few other townspeople hurried over, surrounding the vehicle. I opened my door and stepped out. My leather dress, shoes sank slightly into the dusty ground. Kevin forced a smile that looked more like a pained grimace. He nervously rubbed his hands together. "Caleb, man, look at you. Doing well for yourself with this nice ride." He was practically bowing, all of his old arrogance gone. "You're a big shot in the city now. You gotta help us out." As soon as he spoke, the others chimed in, a chorus of desperation. "He's right, Caleb. We're all from the same town. Blood is thicker than water, right? We know we were wrong. We were fools, blinded by greed. Look at this place. It's all gone to hell. The town's dying. You gotta show us a way out of this mess." Sharon took her cue and, with a loud sob, made a show of collapsing to her knees. "Caleb, honey, it was all my fault. I've got a wicked tongue. I know I do," she wailed, tears and snot running down her face. "I'm begging you. You know people now. Can't you talk to someone? See if we can get the original offer back. We'll take the $250,000. We'll take anything." Her knees started to buckle, but just before she hit the ground, I took a deliberate step to the side. Her performance was meant for an audience, and I was refusing to watch. My gaze hardened. "Don't," I said. The single word was quiet, but it landed like a shard of ice. "The last time we spoke, you were all pointing at my back, calling me a traitor for selling out my heritage. Whereas all this blood is thicker than water, talk then." My eyes swept over their faces, embarrassed, ashamed, panicked. I turned to Kevin. "You had inside information, didn't you?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You were going to get everyone $750,000. Where's your information now? Kevin, where's the money?" Kevin's face turned a deep, blotchy red. His lips trembled, but he couldn't form a single word. I looked back at the crowd, my voice rising. "This land right here is the family legacy you were all so desperate to protect." I pointed a finger at the field of weeds. "And now it's worthless. You could offer it to me for free today, and I wouldn't take it." My words were like knives, each one finding its mark. They froze, their faces pale, the air thick with a silence broken only by the whistling wind. I looked at their pathetic, broken forms and let out a short, cold laugh. "This is the price you pay for your own greed," I said. "It has nothing to do with me." Without another word, I I turned my back on them and walked past the petrified crowd, heading for the path that led up the hill to the cemetery. My parents' graves were where I remembered them, but the plot was overgrown with weeds. I spent the next hour meticulously clearing them away, pulling out the stubborn roots one by one until the headstones were clear. I laid out the flowers I had brought and lit the incense. The small flame flickered, casting a soft glow on my face. "Mom, Dad," I murmured. "I came to visit. I'm doing well in the city. You don't have to worry." A thin curl of smoke drifted upwards, carrying my words into the quiet sky. I bowed my head for a moment, my duty done. When I came back down the hill, I didn't even glance toward the crowd at the edge of the field. I got in my car and drove straight to Leo Martinez's house. Leo and his parents welcomed me like a long-lost son, ushering me inside with warm smiles. Their small brick house was the same as I remembered, humble and lived in. His mom brought out the best snacks they had, pressing cookies and fruit into my hands. After we caught up over dinner, I looked at Leo, who was still wearing a faded t-shirt and work jeans, and got straight to the point. "Leo, you need to get out of Harmony Creek. Come work with me in Columbus." He stared at me, stunned. "My company's growing fast, and I need someone I can trust to help me run things." "You're the only person for the job," I continued. "I'll pay you a real salary, and I'll give you 10% of the company." "Caleb, no, I can't." Leo's face flushed, and he waved his hands dismissively. "The shares. That's way too much." "You've earned it," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "You're my brother." Leo's eyes welled up. He gave a sharp, decisive nod, unable to speak. His parents, who had been listening from the kitchen, were crying quiet tears of joy, thanking me over and over again. My debts were paid. It was time to leave for good. I started my car and drove back toward the town entrance. By the side of that same desolate field, the stage for so much foolish drama, I saw Sharon Miller one last time. She was sitting alone on the ground, her back hunched. She was staring blankly at the land that would never feel the bite of a bulldozer, looking like a discarded marionette with its strings cut, all life and fight gone from her. I glanced at her for only a second before turning my eyes back to the road. I hit the gas, and the SUV kicked up a cloud of dust. Behind me, I left a town consumed by its own decay and regret, a world that was no longer mine. 11. Back in Columbus, Leo quickly got his affairs in order and moved to the city. He didn't have a college degree, but he was a hard worker and a quick learner. I put him in charge of logistics and internal operations, which freed me up to focus on sales and expansion. We worked together perfectly. 2 weeks after Leo started, the best news I could have possibly imagined landed in my lap. A major national construction conglomerate, the primary contractor for the new State Route 315, reached out to me. One of my first clients had recommended me. Their project manager came to my small office in person. "Mr. Evans," he said, getting straight to the point, "we've been vetting local suppliers for weeks, and your company's reputation is impeccable. The quality control on your past jobs has been flawless, and you've never missed a deadline. We need a reliable, long-term material supplier for the highway project, and we believe you're our best option." I sat across from him, my heart pounding in my chest, but I kept my expression calm and professional. We negotiated for a full afternoon. By the end of the day, I had signed a long-term supply contract that was bigger than anything I had ever dreamed of. That single piece of paper catapulted my small company into a completely different league. To meet the demand, I expanded at lightning speed, leasing a massive warehouse, buying a fleet of new trucks, and hiring dozens of employees. In just a few months, the company was 10 times its original size. Leo became my indispensable right-hand man, expertly managing the growing logistics network and taking care of all the headaches. 6 months later, Leo and I were standing in our new office on the top floor of a downtown building. Through the panoramic windows, we could see the entire city skyline. In the distance, a glittering ribbon of light snaked through the dark landscape, the new highway already taking shape. Leo stared at the ribbon of light, shaking his head in disbelief. "It's crazy, isn't it, Caleb?" he said. "Everyone back home was banking their entire future on this highway, and they all ended up with nothing. We never asked it for a thing, and it ended up being the foundation of all this." I smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. "No," I corrected him gently. "This wasn't built on the highway. It was built on reputation and on a choice. It was true. It was built on the reputation I had earned one delivery at a time. And it was built on the choice I made that day to walk away from the poison of that town, even when they all called me a fool and a traitor. Life has a funny way of being ironic. The fortune they had fought and schemed for, the prize for which they had sacrificed their own community, had ended up flowing into my bank account, quietly and professionally. My success was the loudest and most satisfying rebuke to their greedy carnival. 12. Another year passed. My company was now a major player in the regional construction supply industry. I bought a house in the nicest part of the city and was engaged to a wonderful woman. My life was here now, its roots planted deep in the heart of this thriving metropolis. I only heard news of Harmony Creek in bits and pieces from distant relatives who still live there. The town, having missed its one chance at revival, had continued its slow, steady decline. With no jobs, nearly all the young people had left. It was a ghost town in the making, home only to the very old and the very young. Frank Costello had been voted out of office in disgrace. He was a farmer again, and people said he looked like an old man. His son, Kevin, couldn't stand the shame and had left town to work odd jobs down south, bouncing from one factory to another, always getting into fights. And Sharon Miller, they said, had finally lost her mind. She no longer screamed or cursed. She just spent her days sitting on a small stool at the edge of that overgrown field, staring into space, whispering the same words over and over. My $1 million. My big new house. It's coming soon. The land that had once held all their dreams had never been touched again. It was too remote, and the title was a mess. It had been completely reclaimed by nature, a haven for weeds and wild animals. Hearing these stories, I felt nothing. No piti, no triumph. It was like listening to a story about a foreign country, about people I had never known. I had moved on, and the currents of my new life had carried me too far to look back. I eventually understood that the thing that had trapped them wasn't a highway that moved 5 miles to the east. It was the vast, empty chasm in their own hearts, a hole called greed that could never be filled. My story ends on a simple Saturday afternoon. My fiancée and I, along with Leo and his family, are having a barbecue on the spacious balcony of my new house. The sun is setting, and the city below is beginning to sparkle with a million lights. The smell of grilled burgers mixes with the sound of our laughter. I raise my beer and clink it against Leo's. In that small, satisfying sound, I see the genuine happiness in my friend's eyes, and I see everything I ever wanted right here in my hands. That one decision to walk away and never look back had given me the entire world.